Have you ever felt conflicted? When you're so happy now, you have a wonderful partner, a stable life, a loving family, but somewhere in the past there's a faint scratch, small enough to hide but big enough to make your heart ache at night. I'm a young wife, 26, living in a developing country where English is not the first language, and arranged marriages are still the norm. To many Westerners that might sound old-fashioned. But to me, it was the beginning of a happy life I probably never dreamed of. I met my husband through a matchmaker. Sounds traditional, right? But the second I met him I knew, this was the one. He made me feel safe, gentle, and loved in a way I'd never experienced before. 2 years into our marriage I can still confidently say, I am living the dream. But the strange thing is, the happier I am, the more guilty I feel. Not because I did anything wrong to my husband, but because, before I met him, I had broken someone else's heart. A friend, a kind man, a man who had been a light in my darkest days. When I was 22, I had just ended a 4-year situationship with my best friend. He came from a very wealthy family and I did not. He told me straight up, we cannot be together because of our class differences. I understand that. In my country this happens all the time. Love is never enough. Family, status, and outsiders' views always come in the way. I was hurt but I didn't cry. I accepted letting go. Soon after, COVID hit, and I lost my most beloved brother. That shock dragged me into a deep hole. I thought I couldn't get out of bed every morning. I lost my direction, lost my faith, and gradually lost myself. Meanwhile, I found an unexpected support. My university friends. We kept in touch online during the quarantine period, texting every day, calling every night. Among them there was a very special male friend. A smart, humorous, and extremely delicate guy. He was not only my classmate but also my teammate in many activities, the one who helped me pass many exams, the one who stood by me when organizing events. We started talking more. From school, class, to family, pain, and even unhealed wounds. During sleepless nights his voice was the only thing that made me feel alive. When the internship started we went to another city together. A time that I always remember as the best days of my youth. Away from home, away from prejudice, I felt like I was living a different life. There I noticed that his eyes were different. No longer the eyes of a friend, but the eyes of a lover. I remember it clearly. One night I got drunk for the first time in my life. And he kissed me. Not a quick kiss, but 2 gentle, cautious kisses, as if he was afraid of hurting me again. The next morning I talked frankly. I said I wasn't ready. That my heart was still in pieces. That I didn't want to enter a relationship without healing myself. He nodded. No blame. No anger. Just silence, and smiled. I understand. Then the internship ended. I went home and my mother started looking for a husband for me. I mentioned him, but just looking at his picture my mother shook her head. Not good enough, she said. Family looks, job not good enough. I didn't fight. I just told him simply, I can't do it. A few weeks later I met my husband. A wonderful man. A gift from fate. We got engaged after a month and married shortly after. But then, the consequences began to appear. I noticed that my old group of friends, the ones who had been with me through my darkest days, suddenly drifted apart. They didn't congratulate me. They just made sarcastic comments. Your husband must be rich? You finally took the easy way out. Someone sent me videos mocking women who marry for money and tagged me. And him. The friend who kissed me that drunken night? The one who held my hand through my bad days. He was still in the group chat. But now he sends only married woman references, sexist reels, and vitriolic comments. No names. But I know they're for me. And so, I start to wonder, am I a bad person? Did I really hurt a good man just because I chose to live for myself? In a world where love is often tested by cultural barriers, class, and social expectations, there are stories that are not simply about broken hearts, but about the choice between past and future, between emotion and reason, between self and a system that weighs heavily on one's shoulders. Today's protagonist is a 26-year-old woman from a developing country where English is not the first language, and where arranged marriages are still common. But don't let those details fool you. Her story is not old-fashioned. On the contrary, it is a testament to the modern conflict between loyalty, love, and the desire to be true to oneself. A young woman with a broken heart. She is studious, hardworking, and emotional. At the age of 22, while many people are still searching for their life direction, she had just come out of a situationship. A nameless relationship that lasted for 4 years with her best friend. That friend came from a wealthy family, and after so many years of being close, he finally admitted that the gap in social background was the reason why the two could not go further. He was not angry. He understood. In a conservative society, that was the reality, bitter but obvious. And then, as if fate was testing her limits, she lost her close brother to the COVID-19 pandemic. During that dark time, she withdrew, endured each day, and healed herself by clinging to the remaining close relationships. 5 to 6 school friends who had kept in touch during the months of lockdown. Close friendship, and more? Among those friends, there was one person who stood out. He was a smart, funny classmate, and a class rep. There was a deep connection, late-night study sessions, and countless times of supporting each other through stressful exams. During an internship away from home, they spent more time together than ever before. And that's when she realized he was starting to have feelings for her that were more than just friends. It wasn't an assumption. On 2 occasions when she was drunk, he kissed her. And although it confused her, she was honest and made it clear that she wasn't ready for a new relationship. Her heart wasn't healed, and she hadn't gotten over the past. She didn't have romantic feelings for him, at least not at that time. He thought he understood. She thought it wasn't that deep for him. But was she underestimating the feelings of a man who had placed his hopes in her? Family and sky-high standards. When the internship ended and she returned home, the cycle of life began again. Her family, like many other traditional families, immediately started looking for a suitable husband. She told her mother about the guy from the internship, the friend who always accompanied and took care of her. Her mother's reaction was to immediately reject him. Not because he was bad or immoral, but because he did not meet the qualifications. What was the reason? Appearance, background, status, things that in many societies are still considered the top criteria when choosing a son-in-law. She did not resist. Deep down, she also knew that she had never truly loved him. She texted him a rejection, saying that they could not go further. And then, she turned and walked towards the future, meeting the destined husband. Her current husband was a man who was almost perfect by her family's standards, and by her heart. He was not rich, but he came from a warm, loving family and knew how to cherish the woman beside him. From the second date, she knew this was the one. They got engaged after only a month and got married shortly after. During the 2 years of marriage, she lived happily, was loved, and felt very lucky. She had everything she had ever dreamed of: a kind partner, a peaceful home. But the past does not let anyone go easily. The price of a rejection. He thought everything was over. But the old friend, the one who had kissed her drunkenly, the one who had hoped she would be his destination, had not given up. He was not alone. The group of friends who had accompanied them during their university years were actually his close friends. She did not realize it when they helped her overcome the pain of loss. But after she rejected him, and then quickly got engaged and married someone else, their attitudes changed completely. The sarcasm, the coldness, the sexist jokes appeared one after another. The messages implied that she was a gold digger, someone who took advantage of other people's feelings, and then turned away. They did not know that her husband was not rich and that her family was quite well off. But to them, she was simply someone who had betrayed a good guy. The old friend, who used to be warm, was now the one sending misogynistic memes to the group chat. He didn't say anything directly, but everyone knew the message was meant for her. The burden of guilt. She never thought she would carry the guilt for so long. Even though she knew that her current marriage was the right choice, even though she had never intentionally led or deceived her old friend, she still felt that she had deeply hurt someone. There were nights when she wondered, if she had been clearer, gentler, would things have been different? If she hadn't been so quick to marry someone else, would he have been hurt this much? But then deep down she knew that it wouldn't have changed the story. She didn't love him, and no one should stay with anyone just out of gratitude or hurt. The girl could not have imagined that her decision to reject her best friend's love would send her into such a spiral of psychological and social conflict. With each passing day, she felt herself being pushed further away from the path she had hoped would lead to happiness. The feeling of guilt kept simmering in her heart. Old wounds seemed to be dug up and hurt her heart all over again. She could not understand why her decision would lead to such serious consequences. The friends she had trusted, the people with whom she had shared so many memories, were now strangers, with cold eyes and constant criticism. She remembered the moment when her ex-boyfriend said goodbye, his eyes full of regret and disappointment. "I always thought we could have a future together," he said, his voice choked. She had cut everything off, but her heart could not completely escape the sweet memories they had shared. She knew that she had made the right decision, but she could not stop thinking about all that she had left behind. Ever since she had married the husband her family had arranged for her, worries had continued to haunt her. She could tell everyone that her married life was very happy. Her husband was a wonderful man who always took care of her and paid attention to her every need. They had a life that was materially fulfilling and mentally stable. However, her heart could not escape the bondage of the past. The words of her ex-boyfriend kept echoing in her head, and every time she looked at her husband, she felt an emptiness that could not be filled. She couldn't love him the way she loved her ex-boyfriend, but she couldn't deny that he was wonderful, a stability she couldn't find in anyone else. As her old friends began to act cold and distant, she felt more and more crushed in a society where every decision was judged. They didn't understand, they didn't know what she had done and why she had made the decisions she had made. Conversations in her group of friends became suffocating, questions pouring in. "Do you really love him?" a friend asked at a get-together. "Why did you choose a man who had nothing but money? I don't see anything special about him." Those words kept ringing in her head. She didn't know how to explain to them that love wasn't always about wealth or social status. And she couldn't explain to those friends that she never loved her ex-boyfriend the way he wanted her to. Even though she had nothing left to explain, her old friends still kept criticizing her. They started talking about her as a heartless person, someone who only knew how to use other people's feelings to achieve her goals. She only married for money because she had nothing else to look forward to, they said behind her back. The criticism was like sharp knives stabbing into her heart. She didn't know how to ease this pain. She couldn't go back to the past, but she also couldn't live with that criticism forever. Every time she saw her ex-boyfriend, she felt the alienation in his eyes. He was no longer the friend she once trusted, but now he was just a man full of anger and suffering. Once, during a chance encounter, he told her bluntly, "You don't know what you did, but you will regret this." Those words were like a bucket of cold water poured on her, making her feel like she was immersed in a nightmare with no way out. The feeling of guilt became even heavier when she realized that her old friends had not only betrayed her but also betrayed the friendship they had shared with her. She understood that they only wanted her and her ex-boyfriend to be together. And her decision had broken not only their love but also the network of relationships that she had trusted. She felt like an outsider, pushed out of the group of friends, and she could not find a place in her own life. However, the biggest shock she faced was when her ex-boyfriend suddenly appeared at a meeting of her old friends. He looked at her with eyes full of anger, and when she looked into those eyes, she felt the pain and disappointment he had gone through. He was no longer the friend she once knew, but now he was a person full of hatred and resentment. In that moment, all her decisions became meaningless. She could not save the friendship, could not change the past, but she felt like she was standing on a bottomless abyss, where everything around her became chaotic. The tension and conflict reached a breaking point when her ex-boyfriend sent her an angry text message. "You ruined my life. You will pay for what you did." The words were like a punch to the heart. She couldn't take it anymore. Everything seemed to be falling apart right before her eyes. She didn't know how to heal these wounds, how to face her friends. He felt like she had lost everything: friendship, love, and even her belief in herself. That day she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The message came from her ex-boyfriend, the one she had rejected and hurt not only him but also all her old friends, like a knife cutting into her weak heart. Every word in the message was like a slap, a curse full of anger that he had given her. "You don't know how you have ruined me. I did everything for you because I believed in us, but you chose the so-called safety instead of true love. You will pay for what you have done to me and to yourself." These words were not the first time he had said them. She had received a series of angry messages, harsh criticisms over the past time, but this time was different. This time there was a change in his tone. It was no longer confusion or regret, but indignation, uncontrollable anger. He was no longer the friend she had known, but now a wounded, vengeful man, and with each contact she felt herself being drawn into a spiral with no way out. Her heart clenched. She knew she couldn't go back. She had a new life, a new family, and she had found happiness in a relationship that made her feel safe. But why was there this lingering guilt? Why did she feel like she was being tied down by the past? She couldn't ignore the guilt, couldn't ignore the hurt her ex-boyfriend was going through. All these decisions, all the things she had done, seemed to have led to a constant internal battle now. She had chosen her own happiness, but at the cost of losing someone she once loved, someone who had always been there for her in her most difficult times. But could she live with her decision? Is her current happiness worth the pain she has caused others? The guilt was even more intense when she realized that not only her ex-boyfriend but also her group of friends had changed their attitudes. The previous meetings where they shared all their joys and sorrows now turned into tense confrontations. The strange looks and meaningful words that were constantly uttered made her feel isolated in her own life. Those friends did not understand, and she could not explain to them. They only saw a girl who had given up the chance of true love to choose a more stable and easy life, a life that they considered an unworthy trade-off. She could not help but wonder how everything would end. Was there a way to heal these wounds? Could she regain peace of mind when everything around her was falling apart? And then the incident happened like a strong shock, shattering all her hopes. Once again she met her ex-boyfriend, this time not in a chance encounter, but in a dramatic confrontation. He stood before her, his face tense, his eyes red with anger. There was no longer any sign of concern, only contempt and hatred. "Do you know," he said, his voice hoarse with anger, "what people said about you? They said you were a fake, someone who only used my feelings for your own gain. You thought you did the right thing, but you ruined everything. You ruined your own life and mine." He stepped closer to her, and his words were like knives piercing her heart. "I loved you, I tried my best for you. But you abandoned me for a fake life. What could be worse than love betrayed like that?" She stood still, unable to say anything. Everything seemed to be spinning around her, and she felt like she was falling into a bottomless abyss. She couldn't go back, but she couldn't deny everything she had done. The whole space became stifling, heavy. She couldn't breathe anymore because the tension and conflict in her heart had reached its peak. Every decision, every word, every action she made now came back to haunt her. She knew she was wrong, but she couldn't change the past. And the wounds she had created, not only for her ex-boyfriend but also for herself, would never heal. Friendship, love, and relationships, all were like a never-ending spiral, and she couldn't escape. She felt like a loser, someone who had paid too high a price for her choices. "After all, I have settled into a life that everyone would say I am lucky. I have a good husband, a warm family, and I lack nothing. However, on quiet nights when everyone has fallen asleep, when the noise of life has temporarily subsided, I find myself facing another version of myself. An ego that does not laugh, does not rejoice, only remains silent and questions itself. The question always comes back like a sharp needle stabbing into my mind. Could I have done it differently? I used to think I made the right choice. And in fact, according to many social standards, I did. I did not betray anyone, did not cheat, did not play with feelings. I just did not love back at the right time. But human emotions are not as simple as a moral problem. I never promised him. I never said I would choose him as my husband. I never built a castle of love with him. But I let him into the safe zone of my heart. I let myself be comforted by him, shared with, looked at with eyes full of hope. And I was not decisive from the beginning. Perhaps the cruelest thing I have ever done is to give him hope. When a person is immersed in love, they do not need promises. They only need looks, silence, and gentle silences. And that is enough for them to imagine a future. When I entered marriage, I thought that the old things would disappear. I thought that a man's heart that was hurt would also learn to let go. But no. For some people, the hurt does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes anger. It becomes obsession. It becomes prejudice. I once read a sentence like this: "When you choose the easier path, you not only turn your back on love, you also face more difficult consequences." I don't think that choosing an arranged marriage is the easier path, because every marriage needs to be built. But it is true that I chose the path with less risk. And so, I paid the price, by being judged, labeled, shunned, by the very people who used to be my best friends. What am I, in their eyes? A fake girl. A climber. A person who took advantage of my best friend's kindness to be taken care of, to have a place to confide in, and then left as if they had never known each other. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. I am also just a young girl hurt trying to keep my balance. But I knew in their eyes, my explanation was just an excuse. Because I was the one who walked away first. I was the one who was happy and he was the one who was left behind. My best friend's anger was not just because of being rejected, but because they were rejected after they had devoted their heart and soul to someone they believed would definitely stay. And I disillusioned them. And when you disillusion a person, they will no longer forgive like before. I used to think time would heal everything. I used to think that if I just kept quiet long enough, everything would pass. That he would forget. That the group of friends would go back to the way they were before. But no, they didn't forget. They forgave me on the surface, but deep down their eyes were still filled with disappointment. They didn't scold me, but they used silence to punish me. They weren't jealous, but they used sarcastic words to stab me in the back. Every story they told had a hidden meaning. Which sister doesn't choose money over love? Some people just fall in love with a decent man. Your friend was also dumped because her mother didn't agree. Sounds familiar? I forced a smile, but each sentence felt like another stone pressing on my heart. No one hates you as clearly as those who once loved you sincerely. If I could do it again, would I? No, I don't want to do it again. I don't regret not choosing him as my husband. I only regret not being decisive, not being honest, not being stronger enough to end things at the right time. I used to think I was not ready for love. But in fact, I wasn't brave enough to lose someone who truly cared about me. I was afraid of feeling lonely. I was afraid of being alone during the days of suffering because of my brother's death. I needed his existence, but I didn't need that love in the long run. And that was unfair to him. I was selfish. Maybe you're reading this and thinking, this girl really plays with other people's feelings. And you still ask, I understand. And I don't avoid it anymore. Love, the difference, and the silent choices. In the society I live in, loving someone who is not from the same family background, not from the same economic class, is something that requires much more courage than in the West. Family is not just a place of birth. It is a shadow that determines everything. From the person you marry, the job you choose, to how you raise your children later. I was afraid. Afraid that my mother would forever disapprove. Afraid that my marriage to him would be full of insecurities. And most importantly, I did not love him enough to overcome those fears. I wish he understood this. I wish my friends understood this. The final question, do I deserve to be judged? The answer is up to you. If you have ever been rejected by someone you cared for, I believe you will feel angry. If you have ever had to choose between reason and emotion, you will understand me. I'm not a bad person, but I'm not a hero. I'm just a human being, strong at times, weak at times, and have made choices I'm not proud of, but I have to live with. And if you're reading this, if there's a part of you that still thinks of me, please know this. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't love you. It's that I don't love you enough to walk through it all with you.